Okay, everybody, how you doing? This is Bruce Bishop from the Chronicle Telegram. We have something a little unusual today. We're here at Stewart's. I'm going to have you guys introduce yourselves and let us know what you're going to do here.
Hi, I'm Pam from Stewart's TV and Appliance, and we have John Caffarelli here from Valley of the Eagles and Black River Tavern. He's going to make some corned beef dishes here today for us. And go ahead.
Okay. Like Pam said, my name's John Caffarelli. I'm the executive chef at Black River Tavern at the Valley of the Eagles Golf Course in Elyria. And we're going to do a couple different renditions on corned beef and cabbage. Everybody knows the normal one where everything's boiled and buttered, and that's fine. We're also going to do a modern interpretation of that where we're actually going to pan roast some cooked corned beef, served with Brussels sprouts and some cheddar mashed potatoes. And then we're going to do a more traditional Irish dish called boxty. So first thing I'm going to do, because it takes the longest, is I'm going to preheat this pan. And all the recipes are going to be available for this. I've got a portion of corned beef that we've cooked for approximately 3 hours in a simmer. And I'll get into what corned beef I prefer and stuff in a minute. This is for the modern interpretation. I've got a mixture of black peppercorn and ground coriander right here. So this is pastrami spice, more or less. So this is already cooked. We're just going to coat the outside of this with this spice blend. If you want to be a little more modern with your St. Patty's Day this year. And go ahead, don't be shy with it. You know, this is just the exterior. We're going to slice this. Coat it all. Then we add a little bit of olive oil to a pan. We're going to start sauteing this fat side down in a pan. Just until the fat browns a little bit. And then we're going to flip it, we're going to throw it in the oven. And this is going to cook while we prepare all the other dishes. Now let's talk a little bit about corned beef and cabbage. Corned beef and cabbage is not an Irish dish. It is an Irish-American dish. It was born in New York from the immigrants from Ireland who had a tendency to live in the same places as Jewish immigrants from Eastern Europe. So they bought a lot of their meat from kosher butchers. Kosher butchers sell an Eastern European Jewish style of corned beef, which is what we know in this country. Back in, and I'm not a history major, so excuse me if I make any errors, but in the Gaelic culture, the cow was actually sacred. In Irish culture, it was used more as a draft animal and for dairy production. And then when the animal got too old, they would eat it. And then the British, the English, actually put them up to producing corned beef. And when I say corned beef, I mean it was salted beef for use on long voyages and ships and so forth. It's not the brine and spiced beef that we know today. And this corned beef was exported to England until the cattle laws of the 1860s came into effect. And then they couldn't import it anymore, so they imported it around the world. But people in Ireland, so we got a nice browning on this. And we're just going to let this finish cooking in this Wolf convection oven right here. I've got it set at 400 degrees. Just trying to heat it through. Okay. So the beef couldn't be imported to England. It was imported around the world. Different navies would buy it. It was a staple, but the people in Ireland, by and large, the working classes couldn't afford beef. They ate pork. So what's more common in Ireland is Irish bacon, which this is a pork loin. We butcher our own sides of pork in-house at the Black River Tavern, and we cure our own bacon and everything. So this is just a cured and smoked loin of pork. Some of you may know this as Canadian bacon. This is pretty much Irish bacon. So a more traditional dish would have been Irish bacon and cabbage, and sometimes it's called a coddle, where it's actually simmered low and slow for a long time. So if you were to go to Ireland, more likely than not, you wouldn't really find corned beef and cabbage. That's kind of the history behind it. It's as American as spaghetti and meatballs are to the traditional Italian cuisine. Okay, so let's get back to Irish-American corned beef cabbage, what you're probably going to serve for St. Patrick's Day this year. I recommend that you buy your corned beef from one of two places. Vienna Distributors on Carnegie Boulevard in Cleveland sells Cy Ginsberg corned beef. That's what we use. That's what Slyman's uses. That's what Goodman's uses. It's high quality. There's another company called Shaker Valley. More recently, they changed their name to Atlantic. They're on West 65th area in West Cleveland. They make their own corned beef in-house, and it's a very good product too. So the corned beef has a lot of salt in it. I mean, it's basically brine and pickled and cured. You need to get that salt out. The best way to do that is to simmer it. You want to cook it at a simmer, completely covered with water, for about 2 hours and 10 minutes if you're planning on slicing it thin for sandwiches. And if you're going to cook it longer for corned beef and cabbage entree, I recommend at least 3 hours. So the corned beef that we have today, we've cooked for at least 3 hours. And I'm reheating that in the steamer. Now, the cooking liquid that comes out of that, and this is the Wolf steamer here at Stewart's, and this is a real handy appliance to have at home. So I've previously cooked this. And if you're having a big St. Patty's Day celebration at your house, I would recommend you cook your corned beef the day ahead. I recommend that you buy a whole brisket of corned beef also, and not just the flat that's sold in most supermarkets, although that's fine, there's nothing wrong with that. So the flat has a top part to it called the deckle meat, and that's the fat cap. And that has more fat, and if you're like me, fat equals flavor, and you want a little bit of a mix of that in with the plate. The plate itself is relatively lean. Now what we do whenever I serve corned beef is I separate the deckle, the top fat cap, or it's not a fat cap, but it's fattier, the top muscle cap, from the plate and trim it. Because in between those two muscles is a layer of fat, but it's not just fat, it's not just gonna melt away, it has a little bit of connective tissue to it. And you can see here, I've already taken the deckle off. And we're just gonna trim some of this fat off, and it's a lot easier to do this when it's cold, to be honest with you. And you could use this, if you were sauteing your cabbage rather than boiling it, you could use this to add flavor, render it down in a pan, as you would bacon or any other animal fat. So we've got our corned beef and it's cooked. Now, that cooking liquid that you're left with has a whole lot of flavor. You don't want to discard that. I recommend cutting your cabbage into wedges and cooking those wedges of cabbage and your red skin potatoes in the cooking liquid. And then you will get the flavor of the corned beef into your cooking liquid. And we're going to show you with the modern style what we can do with this cooking liquid to make it into a sauce also. So to serve this, always, always, always cut your meat against the grain. So we can see that our grain is running this way. So my knife is only that long and the brisket's longer than that. So I'm just going to set this aside for now. Then I'm going to turn it and I'm going to cut it against the grain so that it's more tender. And you can see when you're cooking meat, you don't want it to be falling apart, but you can see with my fingers that that'll be very easy to chew. But it's meat. We have teeth, so you should still chew it. So whatever your portion is you'd like to do, slice it against the grain. And with the cabbage, I recommend using green cabbage, although you could get very fancy if you want. And you could get Napa cabbage or Savoy cabbage or something like that. The cabbage, I recommend that you keep the core on. Now, whether or not you want to serve it with the core is up to you, but it's a lot easier to fish out of the pot when the core is on. So we just cooked this cabbage with in a little bit of the cooking liquid, and you can see it's tender, but it's not mushy. The cabbage is a cruciferous vegetable. It contains sulfur, and if you overcook it, then that sulfur starts to come out, and that's why cabbage smells bad when you cook it too long. But if you cook it just a little bit so that it's just tender, then it has a real nice sweet flavor to it. So this is our corned beef and cabbage here, and this is the traditional style with the juice, and you could serve this with boiled potatoes in the juice, or you could serve it with mashed potatoes. And that's our plate. So this is traditional. Now, let's set this one aside and go to a modern interpretation of the dish. So you know we've already spiced our corned beef, and one thing to add, we did cook the corned beef with a little bit of pickling spice, which is available in the supermarket. And if you want to flavor up your liquid afterwards, taste it. Is it salty enough? If it's not, add a little bit of salt. If you'd like to add some chicken stock homemade, that's great. If you don't have that, you can add some bouillon or some base. So we've taken some of a quart to be exact, a quart of the cooking liquid, and we've added a little bit of chicken base to this, a bouillon cube or whatever you have at home. So we're going to bring this to a simmer. We're going to make a sauce out of this for our modern corned beef and cabbage. Now, we already have some Brussels sprouts that I've roasted in an oven. Just toss them with a little bit of oil and a little bit of seasoning. Preheated my sheet tray in a 400-degree convection oven. Conventional would work too. And we just want to cook it till it's tender. So Brussels sprouts are pre-cooked. In this pan here, I have some of my homemade bacon that we use at the restaurant. Although store-bought bacon at home is just fine. And we rendered that bacon to get the fat out of it. And then I added a little bit of onion to it. And a little bit of butter to it. We're going to add just a little bit more butter because it's a celebration, right? So we want to cook this down till the onions are golden and the bacon is nice and brown. And then we're just going to reheat our roasted Brussels sprouts on this. Brussels sprouts are already seasoned. Always taste your dishes. Add seasoning at the end. If you like a little more pepper, add some more pepper. I like pepper, so let's put some pepper on this. So we'll use the same seasoning from the meat with the Brussels sprouts here, just to kind of bridge the two items. We're just going to heat this up. Meanwhile, and we don't have all the time in the world to boil potatoes, took some more of that cooking liquid and I cooked some red skin potatoes in it so they absorbed the flavor. And then I drained off the extra liquid, added a little bit of milk and butter and some grated Irish cheddar cheese. Okay, and we just made a simple mashed potatoes. Season it with salt and pepper. The recipe is available. However you make your mashed potatoes, do it that way. If you've just got regular cheddar, then of course use that. If you prefer another cheese, use that. If you can't eat cheese, then don't put it in there. So we've just got some mashed potatoes here. And we'll take a look at our corned beef and see how it's doing. And that's still got a minute or so. We're just going to bring it up until it's hot. Okay, so our cooking liquid is at a simmer. We're going to take some cornstarch, about a tablespoon worth. We're going to add a little bit of cold water to it. And this is what's called making a slurry. So cold water, you don't want lumps. And mix your cornstarch in with a little bit of water, just to thicken this. And it's essentially a gravy. A gravy is just a sauce that has meat drippings in it. This is a cooking liquid for meat, so it's technically gravy. We're just going to add enough of this and bring it to a simmer to cook the starch out. And the cornstarch will show its full thickening power once this comes to a simmer. And the sauce is real simple. We've just added a little bit of chicken stock, or not if you don't want to the cooking liquid. We've tasted it to make sure that it's not too salty. I'm just taking some fresh parsley here. And I'm just going to coarsely chop this, okay, for our sauce. And this is coming to a simmer here. We're going to have to add a little more cornstarch to it. We don't want this sauce to be super thick, but it should coat the back of the spoon. We call that nappe consistency. And the Brussels sprouts, give a toss so they don't burn. Okay. So our sauce is reaching the proper consistency here. You can see, if I put it on the spoon, draw a line through it, it doesn't close up. Okay. So once cornstarch has reached the boil, it's reached its full thickening potential, and it'll only get thinner after this. See, this is not too thick. So we'll just turn that off. And this is going to be a mustard sauce. So I've got two different kinds of mustard. I've got a whole grain mustard here, which has a lot of flavor, but it's got a lot of texture too. So we're going to add about 4 ounces into a quart of cooking liquid. And then just for a little punch, we want something that's a little more piquant in flavor. We've got some Dijon mustard here too. We're going to add about 4 ounces of it. And the Dijon mustard will actually help to thicken the sauce a little bit more. We'll stir that in. At the very end, we're going to add our chopped parsley. If you don't have fresh and you have dried, go ahead. Don't let it stop you from making the dish. Okay. And then at the very, very end, we're going to swirl in just a little bit of butter, just to make it velvety. Throw a couple ounces of butter here. We'll just let that melt into the sauce. Let me clean my area up here just a little bit. The Brussels sprouts are hot. Mashed potatoes are hot. Sauce is made. Corned beef is done. Let's present this on. This is a very nice portion for one person. And because it's brine meat, we really don't need to let it rest or anything. So it's nice and brown. It's got some flavor to it, but it's already been boiled, so it's nice and tender. And again, we can see that the grain is running this way, so we're going to slice it this way into nice. I prefer a thicker slice myself of corned beef. Okay, that's a nice portion for somebody. And then on our plate here, let's arrange some of our Brussels sprouts. You can add a little vinegar at the end too if you want a little punch, kind of offset the fat from the bacon. We've got our hot mashed potatoes here, cheddar mashed potatoes, and we'll put that right in the center of the plate. And give our sauce a stir. We're going to sauce the plate rather than the meat. Because the meat's nice and pink on the inside. We want to show that off a little bit. So I wish I had a whisk. That would be a better implement for this. Get the sauce emulsified. There we go. There's some of the sauce. And then we're just going to arrange our corned beef like this to show it off. Because the corned beef is the centerpiece of the dish. So we want to make that prominent on the plate. You want to give it a little bit of color. Take a little more of that parsley used for your sauce and sprinkle it over. And that's it. This is the modern interpretation of corned beef and cabbage. This is pan roasted pastrami spiced corned beef with cheddar mashed potatoes and roasted Brussels sprouts. If you want to do something a little bit different this year, there's an option for you. Okay, now the last dish we're going to do is a boxty. Now, boxty is just the Irish word for potato pancake, and usually the difference between a German potato pancake and a Jewish potato pancake, and they're all known by different names, latkes and this and that, is the Irish version usually has both mashed and shredded potatoes in it. So we'll use a little bit of that mashed potato we have. Now, you don't have to. Now, these aren't strictly traditional because we actually want to make something as thin as a pancake to be used like a crepe. So we're actually going to fill it. So the first thing we're going to talk about here is the filling. And I used some of this Irish bacon, or smoked pork loin, and I cooked it down with some onions just until the ham, basically it's ham, the ham was starting to brown and the onions got golden. And then I just added some julienne of green cabbage to it. Salt and pepper, granulated garlic and onion, and then a little bit of butter at the end. So this should be tender but firm. We call it al dente when you're talking about pasta. To the tooth, under the tooth, to the bite. Okay, so this filling is pretty easy. You can use bacon for this. You can use store-bought ham for this, but just buy, a bigger piece of ham to cut it into more substantial pieces, because you don't really want a deli slice of ham in here. You want something to chew on here. It needs to be a little more substantial. Okay, so this is the filling, pretty much, and it's soft. Right? We don't need to take the time to go through that. So this hot filling is here, and then we're going to show you how to make the potato pancakes right now. Let me get some of this stuff out of the way. Okay, let's go over here to the KitchenAid appliance. And these KitchenAids have all kinds of attachments. This particular attachment is just a grater attachment. Now, you can grate whatever you want. Carrots for salads. Today we're going to be using potatoes. So we are going to just run the potatoes through this. And if you don't have one of these, do not fear. You can always use your trusty box grater. Just watch your knuckles. But this makes things a whole lot faster and a whole lot easier. Just feed your potatoes through here. And I'm not going to take the time to do all of these potatoes right now, because I'm sure you get the idea. So 2 pounds of potatoes and about half a yellow onion. So we'll just grate the yellow onion here. And we're going to take about 2 cups of flour, and we're actually going to mix this into the potato mixture. Use a spoon, use your hands. If you've got gloves, use those. Okay? Add your seasonings to that, and that's about 1.5 tablespoons of Lowry seasoned salt in there. And then milk. We've got a whole quart of milk that we're going to add. And again, I'll spare you the details on this because it's just time consuming. And you're just making a pancake batter that has onion and potato in it. And this is what you've got. And I made this yesterday, and so the potato is discolored just slightly, but that's okay because we're going to brown it anyhow in the pan. So it should be pretty thin, should be pretty soupy. You're going to add about 3 eggs to this or so. So we'll get a couple pans fired up here, make a couple of these potato pancakes. I'm going to cook them on about medium heat. And these you can do ahead of time. And we've got this great griddle underneath here too from Wolf on this range top that you could use. It'd be great. It's just, you got to clean it afterwards. But in a restaurant, we would make these, before service, and then we would just reheat them on the griddle. So a little bit of oil, whatever kind you like. We have olive oil now. Let's get our pans hot, but not too hot. Spread the oil around. We want to do about 3-ounce pancakes. So I've got a 1/2 cup measure here, and I'm just going to do a scant bit because this is 4 ounces. We want about 3 ounces. We'll just spread the potato out with the bottom of the cup. Use a ladle if you like. You make these any size you want. It's just if you make them too large, they're going to be difficult to flip, because you are going to have to cook these on both sides. Make a couple of these pancakes. And there's no leavening in these pancakes. We don't use any baking soda or anything. So you're not going to get the bubbles you do with a normal breakfast pancake. We're just going to watch to see that the top is kind of solidified, because these are a bit delicate. We don't want to flip them prematurely. And we're just going to let those cook. Give your pan a shake, see if it'll come off the bottom. You may lose 1 or 2. It's like making crepes. Sometimes they don't come out. Pam, do we have a spatula? I'm sorry, I should have brought one. Perfect. Thank you very much. Oh, I should. Thank you very much. We'll just loosen that up. And they're pretty forgiving. If you make a mistake like I just did, you can kind of piece them back together. We're going to fold these over like an omelet anyhow when we serve them. So it looks like my pans could have been a little more non-stick than they are. Don't know if this one's going to come out or not. I think maybe we ought to just start over on this one. Good cook knows when they're outmatched. Just start over. Well, that one didn't work out all that well either, but We'll do one more. Even if it's ugly, it'll still be tasty.
Is that like a latke? Is that what that is?
Sort of. And I'm not all that familiar with Jewish cuisine, but I believe aren't latkes made with mashed potatoes? And a German potato pancake is usually made with shredded potatoes. And a boxty traditionally is made with both, shredded and mashed. However, we want these to be thin, so we actually just made these with the shredded potatoes.
Okay.
Yeah, they're all, just like every cuisine has a dumpling, every cuisine has a pancake of some sort. And truth be told, these are a lot easier to make on a griddle. We have a griddle. Learn from my mistakes and use that. So we're just waiting for the tops to solidify a little bit, and this one's almost there. No, that one didn't turn out either. Well, instead of folding them inside the pancakes, we'll just top the pancakes with the filling. And we will just adapt. So I hope if you try this at home, you have better luck than I do, or better nonstick pans. All right. So I would give about two pancakes per portion. That's 6 ounces of starch. That's more than enough.
Beautiful.
We'll put our filling, which is turned into a topping, right on top of it. And a nice mustard cream sauce would be nice. We've got this sauce that we made on our modern rendition that we could use too. Right over the top. And this is Irish boxty potato pancakes with Irish bacon and cabbage filling and a mustard sauce. Here's another option. It's maybe a little more traditional for your St. Patrick's Day too.
Good.
That's it for the cooking demo. And again, my name is John Caffarelli from the Black River Tavern at the Valley of the Eagles on Gulf Road in Elyria, and I'm here at Stewart's TV and Appliance on Cleveland Street in Elyria. This is a great kitchen down here. I recommend you come out here, buy your appliances, and if you don't want to cook your corned beef and cabbage at home, we'll be having St. Patrick's Day specials Friday and Saturday, and then corned beef hash during our weekly brunch on Sunday.
Sounds good. It definitely sounds like the better option just to have you do it.
Yeah.
At least for me.
Hope I won't mess up your boxy pancakes.
I have faith in you. So any closing thoughts from you over here?
No, but I think the recipes are going to be somewhere, possibly.
Correct. Yeah, we'll run them in the Chronicle. I believe we'll have them online, and we'll get everything all figured out.
So look for the recipes, and thank you, John. It smells delicious in here.
All right. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We've got some corned beef here to take care of. So everybody have a great afternoon, and we really appreciate you watching.